I think Vikasji, by the time Gajen sir joins, we should start the program because we have three guests already.
Yes, yes,
So
sir.
let's not wait. Maybe in between, whenever he'll join, we'll welcome him.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Gitanjali, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I, Gitanjali Raj, on behalf of ABS Engineering College, Ghaziabad, feels great pleasure to welcome you all to the second day of National Seminar on using IQAC as a catalyst for sponsored by NAC. It is both an honor and a privilege to welcome you all today to this learned community where we as faculty members of different institutions are surrounded by people helping us in understanding the requirement and values of teaching learning process to the fullest. I would now like to extend my heartiest welcome to Professor Dr. Hemant Ahuja, IQAC Coordinator of ABES Engineering College, to add on some glory by his words of wisdom.
Well, thank you, madam. A very good morning to one and all present here. On behalf of Internal Quality Assurance Cell of ABS Engineering College, I welcome you all to the second day of NAC sponsored 2 days national seminar on using IQAC as a catalyst for meaningful quality enhancement and Indian perspective. The idea is to talk about IQAC, its role, how it can be a catalyst in Indian perspective. That is why we called eminent speakers from India. Last day, we had three sessions, including the inaugural session, keynote session, and the technical session. During these sessions, papers in the last session, the technical session, the papers presented were around 15, although 8 could make it up yesterday and rest are remaining. The program was inaugurated by our chief guest, Professor Vineet Kansal, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University. It was followed by the keynote sessions by Dr. L. Ravi Kumar. He's Professor, BMS College of Engineering, Bangalore. He spoke about the outcome-based education and covered the basic philosophy of outcome-based education, covering almost everything from vision and mission to the attainment of learning outcomes. It was one of the highly appreciated sessions. The second keynote was delivered by Dr. Sachin Deshmukh. He's professor at Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad. He touched upon the importance of IQAC in higher educational institutions. He discussed the various processes to be carried out for quality enhancement and the complete working of IQAC. His talk was on one of the significant areas and was highly informative for all of us. I could say especially for ABS Engineering College, because we are going for the second cycle of accreditation. The third keynote was delivered by Lieutenant Colonel Baldev Singh Chaudhary, who presented about the importance of teachers empowerment in attaining the quality. This is one of the needed topic because teachers, unless the teachers are empowered, we cannot talk about quality. So it was one of the best delivered sessions. And after these three keynote sessions, there was the post-lunch session where participants from all over the nation presented their papers related to topics like innovation in teaching, the changing paradigm of education, best practices, challenges faced by the slow learners, outcome-based education, evaluation process, and similar areas. So altogether, the day, it was a nice day, program went well, and great knowledge sharing and exchange of ideas happened among the participants. Going further, today we have 4 keynote speeches in the pre-lunch session, followed by the valedictory program. So I welcome all the keynote speakers for today's session. The first session would be taken by Professor Abid Halim Faculty of Engineering and Technology, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. He is a renowned name in the field of education. I welcome you, sir. The second session would be delivered by Professor Gajendra Singh. He has not yet joined, but I would like to, give my gratitude for his presence here. He is the one with whom I have worked for so long, and in fact, I've learned a lot through his innovative thoughts and actions. He's a great source of inspiration, and in his absentia, I welcome him. The third session would be taken up by Dr. Vandana Arora, Group Director, Lloyd Group of Institutions, Greater Noida. I know her as a great orator and a strong leader. Madam, I wholeheartedly welcome you to the program. I further welcome Dr. Ashish Malik, Director, Access Colleges, Kanpur. He's a young, talented leader with strong charisma and a great vision. I welcome you, Ashish, sir. I welcome all the head of the departments, professors, faculty, and staff members, as well as the participants for the second day of the program. Welcome, and I look forward to see the best of knowledge sharing sessions as before. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was great pleasure to revise the previous day that we already had with you and all other keynote speakers. Now I'm glad to introduce our keynote speaker of today's session, Professor Abid Halim. Dr. Abid Halim is a professor of mechanical engineering, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. He has been founding honorary director, internal quality assurance cell of the university. Sir has headed mechanical engineering department and MBA evening program at Jamia. Dr. Abid has also been an honorary visiting professor to IIT Delhi. Presently, he is regional editor, Global Journal of Flexible Systems Management, Springer, associate editor with JCOT Elsevier and ICE Scholar. Conferred with the fellowship of AGBA and has professional and life membership of IIIE, ISME, ISTE, GIFT, SCL, IICC, and ISC. Also, he has served as president and secretary to Global Institute of Flexible System Management and AGBA. With H-index of 40 in Google Scholar, 28 in Scopus, and more than 6,200 citations has published under Sir's name, and more than 400 research articles, of which more than 190 articles are indexed in Scopus, and 3 books to his credit. His latest book is Handbook of Materials Management, published by Prentice Hall of India, while the latest edited book is an update on medical 3D printing from Solibris. He has more than 33 years of teaching and research experience at graduate and higher level and has produced more than 28 PhDs. Sir has visited various academic institutions and industries in USA, UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Australia towards academic pursuits. Besides having consulting and arbitration experience, he also provides leadership in taking up different types of educational and elite programs in the field of management and technology. He has undertaken consultancy work with DFID, Government of Odisha, worked as a High Court appointed arbitrator for the construction project at DIAC, New Delhi. He has also executed various research and support projects of DST, AICT, and UGC and completed FIST funding. He has been on the board of Telecommunication Consultants India Limited as an independent director and advisor to DTDC Limited. Sir has been a member of the ad hoc task force at Performance Management Group of Cabinet Secretariat of Government of India. It is on the advisory boards of various institutions and involved in multiple institutional activities related to policy planning, administration, accreditation, curriculum design, admission, evaluation, examination, and other educational processes. His teaching and research areas include technology management, supply chain management, halal supply chain, additive manufacturing, innovation, sustainability, elite fields of industrial engineering. Sir, I'm really spellbound after reading through such a great profile of yours. It was really an honor. I would like to give a huge round of applause to you, sir. Now, I would like to hand over the forum to you, sir, to share your experiences with all the people surrounded here.
Thank you very much. I'm audible. Should I?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Tell me if my presentation is visible. It is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Improving
Right.
research visibility in the current scenario.
Yeah. Good morning. Don't read by his CV. It's everybody has some good achievements, and this is the traveling that I have done in 33 years. So that's why I built my CV. It's very nice to talk to you. I'm not able to see everybody because I'm talking to my laptop. How much time I can take with you? कितने टाइम तक मैं बात कर सकता हूँ? Half an hour?
Sir, for every session, we have kept around 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So 20 minutes with the 5 minutes you could have given me by not talking about my CV. This is something.
No
Yeah.
problem, sir. We will give you those 5 minutes, 25 minutes to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I
So
think
nice of
because
you.
other presenters are there, so accordingly they will
Obvious.
request them. Yeah.
See, this is an important presentation, and why I'm talking to you is because in 2011 I started the IQAC at Jamia, and what I saw that very senior people do not want to share their CV, and what I saw that people have written papers but it is not visible, and research and extension activities are the backbone of getting a good NAC grade. So I motivated my teachers and I developed a lot of strategies of improving our H index of the university. And ultimately, we got into a very good rank, and globally also we are getting into a good rank. So this presentation is to motivate and to inform you about improving your research visibility. I don't have any Facebook page, I don't have any Twitter page, and I only communicate with email because I can handle email sufficiently. This is something. Presentation is the main motivation was from Professor S.G. Deshmukh Saab, my students, and lot of teachers from my university and outside university. No doubt, I am very thankful to Mr. Patil also, and to this management and this college and to Bhadoria. Just a very brief about this communication. I may call it transmission or broadcasting. Why do we do research? हम लोग रिसर्च करते ही क्यों हैं? पहली बात तो ये. I think I'm comfortable with Hindi also. A lot of you, all of you must be knowing about Hindi. And we have in Delhi, we have come to start a mixed mode of talking into. So why do we research? What I see that it is compulsion. Most of the time, what I see, it is compulsion. I've written many things that we do research, knowledge creation, dissemination, attracting students, research faculty. But I see very few people want to do research for their passion. They want to do research because of compulsion, because of accreditation. Accreditation is a compulsion because of ranking. Sometimes it's act of God. You have nothing to do, you got into PhD and you became a researcher. Then we want to disseminate what we do. We know that as a researcher that academia has become highly competitive. Anywhere you go for interview or for promotion, you need to tell that you have a visible research profile. The important thing is here that 50% of research publication are never read by anybody. Whatever I publish, I've given my own, that out of my 400 plus papers, only 200 are in Scopus. And out of these 200 are in Scopus, the cited ones are only 160. In this Google Scholar also, only 75% of my papers are cited, rest are not cited. Understand, the research that I do, it takes 5 years, 7 years of my life. But what happens after that? Most of the PhD thesis writers who are conferred with degree, they don't read back their thesis. They put in a good almirah, they show it to others, but they never read it again. Lot of people, most of the people don't read their article once it gets published. The problem is not that much. The problem is here that they don't want to meet their guide after the thesis is over. Yes, correct. I more than 30-35 PhDs, I know that how much my students, most of them students hate me. They don't like me. Because maybe a tough taskmaster. And mainly people are not able to communicate good research skills out of their PhD. Mainly. And why this happens? Why you are not able to communicate good research hard skills? Why you are not able to like your profile and like your research? Because you never like the work. It's a job for you. And there is always a ringmaster effect from your guide, from your departments, from your college. And that's why you were compelled to do hard work. 12 hours, 14 hours. You wanted to enjoy, but you were asked to do hard work. And you never liked that work. The guide expectation was that you should be able to write nicely, better than your guide. But it was difficult for you to come to aligned with his expectations. Ultimately, there was no motivation, no passion, and no love for what I did and do during my research. This is what happens in PhD. And people are not at a good pace with their guide. That's why the shelf life of my research becomes very less. Friends, followers, they only read your paper. Postgraduate students, they read your paper after some time. And undergraduate students as a coursework, reference article after some more time. The interesting development that is taking place, that every 15 to 20 years, the research article published are getting double. Double, yeah. 50 million journal articles are available. And there is globalization of research and localization of research areas. Globalization means that you can read anybody's paper, but you are compelled to do research in the local subjects, the local issues, on the local things. And a strong framework is coming to you that you now can't do this, you can't do this. Your English should be good, methods should be very nice, appropriate, and then journals have their own very tough benchmarks. The transfer of knowledge from institute into commercial marketplace is a big. So what I think that there is a strong need to market my research. If you go to the list of index journals, you will find that the maximum number of journals are in medical sciences. Then they come to biology, business, engineering, computer science, social science, health, safety, and so on and so on. So, maximum number of journals are in medical science. Why they are? Because maximum number of paid journals are in medical science. The research that we do can be classified as disciplinary, multidisciplinary, institute, international, and experimental, methodology based, case based, simulation based, and the top international publishers are here. See, and they are not 10, 50-year old, they are hundreds of year old, hundreds of year old. And you see, there is no publisher from India. This is Elsevier website and is a global, Elsevier is a global information analytics business. Right? It established in 1880, around more than 140 years ago. And now it has transformed to a data analytics company. So now you understand that business is going to become a data analytics business. Your journal company has transformed, and you will find a lot of important issues also. The Springer was founded in 1842 as Springer Verlag in Germany. The top citation databases are Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar, JGate, and SSRN. And there are many, India Gates, and a lot of things are there. ICI, this. These databases, they are run by huge data analytics companies. Web of Science was earlier Web of Knowledge, and it is a subscription-based access. It has provided a publisher independent global citation database of academic discipline. And it is currently maintained by Clarivate Analytics, which is a business of Thomson Reuters. And it has more than 172 million records. You can understand. Then Web of Science is a multidisciplinary platform, and more than 9,000 journals are there. The important thing is here that Indian company DRS, which was into the data analytics, has been sold to Clarivate Analytics for $915 million, around $1 billion. So this company has also transformed to a data analytics company. The Web of Science consists of 6 online databases: SCIE, SCI. The maximum number of journals are in SCIE expanded journals. Social Science Citation Index, 3000 journals. Art and Humanities Citation Index, 1700 art journals. Emerging Sources Citation Index, Book Citation Index, Conference Proceeding Citation Index. So there are many type of citation indexes available here. Clarivate analysis is there not only for this citation or publishing papers or this, but it is into master journalist insights and notes, your formatting of paper. Now Sage is also formatting your papers, Copernio, Publion, how to review your paper, how you write your paper, and then all type of databases required for this. Then very important one is Elsevier Scopus. Scopus, like if you see the Scopus output for Jamia, it will come like this, because Jamia subscribe to Scopus and it's very expensive to subscribe to them. Like Indian Institute of Science, see, they have more than 58,000. I think they have $60,000 data papers index here. And the maximum research is there in engineering, then physics and astronomy, and then material science and chemistry. This is my Scopus database. This is the database of Professor Deshmukh. So this gives you a very good information about your research articles which are indexed. It gives you indexation for only those journals, papers which are indexed by Scopus. If your paper is cited by any paper which is not indexed in Scopus, it will not show. So Scopus has the maximum number of indexed journals, which is around more than double of the Web of Science. 24,600 active journals and 5,000 publishers. There are open access filters in Scopus also. Gold are open access, that are documents which are published only in open access articles. Hybrid gold, where you have the choice of publishing open access. Then bronze, which are free to read, published version of record manuscripts. And green, free to read at repository. Bronze may sometimes when you are publishing a paper for 2 months, 3 months, they give it free. Benefits, Scopus has extensive benefits. You can identify the trends, you can identify the research latest areas, you can identify which are the leading experts, you can enhance your visibility, you can discover the research through keywords, and you can claim your work. Your work will be there, you may leave your college, and it also helps you in fostering collaboration, funding, and empowerment. Next, third one is Google Scholar, which provides a simple way to broadly search for a scholarly literature. And now the Google Scholar has also is not considering the poor quality journals, right? Then this is my profile in Google Scholar, and there is JGate, which is launched by Informatics India Limited, and it provides seamless access to millions of journal articles available online, offered by 13,000 plus publishers. Social Science Research Network is a platform for dissemination of early stage research. PubMed is a very dedicated medical indexing database. It has more than 30 million citations for biomedical journals from Medline, life science journals, and online books. It is a free resource, unlike Scopus and Web of Science and JGate and SSRM. It is free, and it is maintained by National Center for Biotechnology Informatics. There are networking sites for your research. Like most of you must be having the Research Gate profiles, Google Scholar profiles, Academia profiles, Mendeley profiles, and Kudos profile. ResearchGate's profile is, I think, the most user friendly, and it gives you the maximum visibility, and you can talk to people who can follow them, they can follow you, and your CV is also available to everybody. And here the free papers are also available. It is a free access, and you have access to more than 135 plus million publications. It gives your research score, it gives your how many people have read your paper, and so on. It measures the academia is second, it's growing very fast, and it has very big academics and researcher database. It's again a social networking site for academics, and a lot of people have signed for this, but it is not as popular as Mendeley also has for the research networking funding. For altmetrics, you can join Kudos Hub. So if you are a researcher, first thing that you need to make is an ORCID ID, Scopus ID, SSRN ID, or Web of Science ID, or researcher ID. These ORCID ID is available to everybody. You can register, you can make your ID. You can connect for your publication, grants, peer review, and so on. It's open, non-proprietary, not for profit organization. So if you are publishing, you should have an ORCID ID. Researcher ID is also available, and it is to you can go through make an ID. It consolidates multiple research profiles into one. Then you have the social media for promoting research through the WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and blogs. You can advocate your work through Twitter. You can reach to your people through WhatsApp. You can make a group where you can share your research through WhatsApp group. LinkedIn profiles also nice to see, and you can tell about your publications and share it, thereby improving your research visibility. There are many blogging sites. The second important thing to improve your visibility is to attend conference and seminars. They provide you with a great opportunity to promote your research and yourself. Even if you are not presenting your work, you can use them as an opportunity to meet other researchers. My PhD students used to go to conference and to talk to people who are there as editors of journals. And then they talk to them that if I write in paper, what expectations they have from his paper. You have to keep an eye on the names of the researchers you would like to meet and practice introducing and your research. This is very important. Conference and seminars are very important events to promote, to understand your environment, research environment. Then you should develop more and more FDP workshop and seminars to disseminate your research to others and to understand to the research of others also. This also improves the visibility of your research. All this facilitated through internet, and internet is become a tool for research and it is a medium of research. So understand how you can best do for your research. So the last things, you should have a social media presence. Link your work to your supervisor, to your institute. Have a Scholar ID, ResearchGate ID, Academia ID, LinkedIn, blogs, and communicate to good editors via ResearchGate. And try to manage a balance on quality versus quantity. There are some steps. If I have time, I can take three, four more minutes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is for the early career researchers. First is be authentic and consistent. Tell your strength to improve your brand reputation, to receive invitations, to give keynotes, consult opportunities. You should have very clear goal. Write your story, a short bio for Twitter, long bio for LinkedIn, personal, which I have not done. And then take a good shot of yours. Shot means your photograph, and then build your web presence through a CV, your popular social sites. Then make your research open access, give it to people to read, to cite, or you can go for publishing an open access journal. Share your research data where appropriate. Sharing improves your visibility, and tracking your research where it is being cited. It is very important. So my last remarks are: the pressure on research visibility as a researcher is vital for teaching job, almost all research and development based jobs. There are trends which limits your research outcome, your affect the quality and quantity of research, and your research publishing companies have become data analytic companies. And understand that social media is now most important, and companies are collecting your data and analyzing it. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, sir. It was really an informative session for we as scholars, research scholars, or you may say that we as faculty serving an institute, because it is really important to understand the value of research and also to propagate it to the social media and the people who are working around us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And see, this is something, if you make it compulsory for everybody to join the research gate, to make the join this, then you will be able to.
Yes, sir. It is already there in our institute. We actually try to follow different types of accreditation rules which are really required. Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so going further, I would now like to introduce our next keynote speaker who's waiting there from a while, Professor Gajendra Singh. Having born in a small village of western UP in January 1954, Professor Gajendra Singh did his BTech in electrical engineering from University of Roorkee in 1976, which is now IIT Roorkee. He also graduated in aeronautical engineering from Air Force Technical College, Bangalore in December IIT Kharagpur and PhD from IIT Delhi. Sir has an illustrious career in Indian Air Force as an aviation engineer, where he was honored with Vishisht Seva Medal by President of India for his outstanding performance. After serving Indian Air Force for 28 long years, in year 2004, he moved into academic field. He served at Krishna Institute of Engineering and Technology, Ghaziabad, for 10 years in the capacity of Dean and Additional Director and Director. After that, he served at Dean of School of Engineering and Technology. We at ABS were also being privileged to work under Sir's guidance as he served as Director ABS Engineering College, Ghaziabad till December 2018 when he superannuated at the age of 65 years. He is still associated with ABS Engineering College as professor in the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering. His areas of research interest are power system protection, solar thermal, photovoltaic, and industrial motors. He has published nearly 65 research publications in the national and international journals of repute. He has supervised 21 MTech dissertations and 1 PhD. 3 research scholars are currently pursuing their research work under Sir's guidance. Professor Singh has also been closely associated with value education in institutions of higher learning. He was instrumental in introducing a course in the area of value education and ethics in School of Engineering and Technology while serving at Sharda University. Since 2012, he holds the appointment of Dean Value Education of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University, Lucknow. Currently, he is also engaged with AICTE as part of a national team for training the directors, deans, faculty members of various engineering universities and affiliated colleges located across all the state of the country in the area of value education. We really thank you, sir, for being the part of our institution and continuously guiding us through value education. Now, I would like to request Professor Singh to take over and guide our participants who are being gathered here at national level from various institutions throughout the country. Over to you, sir. I think there is a connectivity issue with the Professor Singh. So let us just wait for 1 or 2 minutes so that he can again join. Sir is trying to resolve the issue, so all the participants, please be patient and sir will be joining us soon.
Am I audible, Geetanjali ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I get the message that I got about 20-25 minutes to speak. Then I don't think there is any need for showing the presentation. I have the presentation, but if you give me only 20 minutes, then I may not be requiring it. Well, can I start with your kind permission?
Yes, sir. We all were waiting for you.
Okay, fine. So very good morning, all the dear participants. But still, I would like, something to show. I have the tray with me. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. It is.
Okay, fine. Okay. And the change also can be seen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well. So very good morning. I just heard a very information embedded talk by Professor Halim. But then I just noted two very pertinent points, which I would like to take forward. Professor Abid Halim at one stage stated that when we are putting in all kinds of hard work, look within. Most of the work is done with no love for what I did and what I do. No motivation, no passion. This is what he had stated in one of the slides when he was presenting. Friends, when I happened to look at the entire list of about 56, 57 participants and went over the prefix to their names, assistant professors, associate professors, doctors, I can easily find out the average age of the participants. It could be around 35 years or so. Now, if you happen to look back and trace the journey of yours on this planet, I would like to ask you, how many years did you invest in acquiring education? 10 plus 2 is 12 years. If you leave aside the prep, LKG, UKG, all that education. Engineering graduation, 4 years. Each one of you is postgraduate. another 2 years. This makes it 18 years, and I see large number of you having a prefix as doctor. So I do not know how many years you spent in acquiring that particular qualification. But 18 years is the minimum. And when I say about 35 years of average age, I ask a very simple question. That when you invest some time, effort, energy, money in something, each one of you, each one of us have some objective, some purpose behind it. You know, you happen to go to the market, with some objective in your mind. Going to Mother Dairy to buy milk, or a vegetable shop to buy some vegetables, going to the mall to buy some shirts or trousers or something else, some provision. You come to the college, you have some objective in your mind. You go to an auditorium, you have some objective of seeing a movie in your mind. You have clarity of the objective. You have a clarity of the purpose, the goal. So when you spend more than half of your life in acquiring education, have you ever thought what had been the purpose behind it? Why did you invest more than half of your lifespan in acquisition of the education? And has that purpose been met? Has that what you dreamt has been realized? Or you still have no love for what you do or what you did, and you have no passion left in you, no energy, no vibration. What you have all the time, the fear, the anxiety, the disappointment, the feeling of having less than required, the depressive feeling, anger, suffocation, frustration. You ask yourself, if more than half of your lifespan you have invested only in acquiring of that education, which your parents, your near and dear ones felt that we are giving this education to a child, so that child will lead his or her life in utmost comfort, state of joy, feeling happy, and experiencing all kinds of prosperity in his or her life. That is what they had dreamt. But when you look back and you have a clear assessment, where you stand after their effort of spending money and your effort of investing your time, effort, and you're still investing. That is what Professor Halim was saying. You're still, he's gave all kinds of things for research work. So you're still investing for what? What is the objective? Is the objective to become an assistant professor, associate professor, professor, director, dean, vice chancellor, or some education minister, or some UGC chairman? What is the objective? So friends, this is what is my question, that what is the basic aspiration you have? Why are we living? Why are we traversing our journey on this planet for whatever 70, 80, 90 or 100 years? Because we are not here for an indefinite period of time. We have come, one day we will go. And will we in this state of fear and anxiety only? Having all kinds of disappointments in our lives. That I could not do this, my director did not understand me, my management kept on threatening me, so what could I do? I always lived in a state of fear that I can be checked out of the gate of the institution I serve any point of time. Where are we? What is the aspiration? Let's have the clarity of this first before we understand what is the role of the education. If you ask within, whatever you are doing, whatever our parents, grandparents, great-great-parents, our ancestors did, they had only one basic desire, that they wanted to be happy. Do you want to be happy for whatever you want to do? You can answer yourself. Do we want to be prosperous? Do we want the continuity of happiness and prosperity, that on Monday, the happiness is fine, on Tuesday, unhappiness is okay? So at family, unhappiness is okay. But when I am sitting in front of the colleagues or the director or the head of the department, I have to be seen as being happy. Otherwise, I will be complained against that this person is always making noise, is creating disharmony among the group of the people. So he is the first one to be singled out and thrown out of the college. So you pretend, or you want this state of happiness in continuity. If that is so, your answer is yes, then ask yourself, are we happy? Are we prosperous? And is there a continuity? I'll just go quickly. Why this gap between our desire and a state of being, even after investing so much of time in acquiring that education from which our parents, grandparents, that we will be living in a state of continuous happiness and prosperity. That is what you do for your children. Why are you investing so much of time, effort, energy, and looking for best of the school in the near vicinity in your township to put your child? Because your expectation is that if the time invested by this child in acquiring education, he is going to be happy and prosperous continuously. Your parents also did the same. But then why is this gap? What are we doing to fill this gap? Because today, many of us may not have the even parents, or if they are there, they will not be interfering. They have left to us now to decide, to work for, to fill this gap. Well, firstly, quickly, let me just tell that what is this happiness and how does it differ from state of excitement? In a nutshell, many of you, if you are exposed to some of the contents of the value education in AKTU or some other universities, it is already there in 19 universities. You will understand the definition of the happiness. Happiness is not in the state of excitement. Throughout the week, you live in a state of fear and disappointment and depression and frustration in your place of work. But on Saturday or Sunday, you take out the family to a mall, to some merrymaking, or to see a movie, or to dine out. Or for that matter, when you get 3-4 days break, you take the family to a hilly terrain to have some luxury time. In fact, that luxury time is basically to get out of that to make that disharmony in your place of work so that you can leave it behind, you can forget about it and spend some time with some state of excitement. But can that excitement be retained in continuity? You happen to see a movie once, you see it second time, will you have the similar kind of excitement? In fact, third time, if you see, you will get bored. Will there be continuity of that kind of an excitement? So in fact, we keep undertaking such kind of escape routes and escape activities to come out of that unhappy situation where there is a disharmony. So disharmony is unhappiness, while state of harmony in my thoughts within me, that is what is the state of happiness. Happiness is not that when I'm feeling hungry, I get the food. That is fulfilling the need of the body. It is required whenever it comes. You're feeling thirsty, you take water, it goes. But this happiness is something beyond the body. It is within me. That me is something different than the material body. Body is only an instrument which has got 5 sensory systems, nothing else. But there is something within me, what I call it consciousness, in value education or otherwise, in many scriptures or scriptures of all followers, they call it, they give the different name, the energy, the consciousness, the self or the I or soul or whatever name you give it. But there is something else. And that state of happiness is there. You may be sitting in a very air-conditioned environment, comfortably lying down on a sofa. Your body is in comfort. The material is in comfort. But then if you have had a very harsh talk with your boss, with your director, with HOD or some principal or the management, or you have been that unless you deliver it, your days are over here. So what kind is happiness you are enjoying? You have the absolutely comfortable environment around. What is happening within you? You may be driving a car of 15 lakhs. But the inner dialogue within you while driving is something different. Then you are not relishing that high value cars driving. And with that kind of agitated or conflicting thoughts within you, if you happen to meet with a very minor incident while driving, then what is going to happen? Response or reaction? Ask yourself. So the happiness is the state of harmony which can be continued endless. That is the happiness. Happiness is not excitement. When, for example, you have had a harsh talk, for example, you have been called by the a section in charge or the director, for example, and you have been pulled up for something which you said that it was none of your fault, somebody else has done it, and you are getting blamed for it. But he said, no, it is not acceptable to me, and you have to take accountability and responsibility for it. So when you return back, you want to write an email to different kind of people, to head or to director and copy to the manager. Your next given friend comes and he says, no, just hold on. You're highly agitated. You draft the mail, all right, but release it tomorrow morning. And actually, when tomorrow morning, when you look at the mail, either you alter its contents, you revise it, and then release it, or you don't release it at all. Why? Your good friend advised you, because that time you were not having the thoughts in your harmony. Agitated thoughts, thoughts of opposition, thoughts of conflicts. You are not able to see the situation clearly. You are not in a position to evaluate that incident with clarity. But now you are in a state of harmony in your thoughts. You are able to see which all things went wrong and what could be the way forward, what could be the program made, the roadmap made to resolve that issue now. That is what is harmony within, and that is what is happiness. So I'll just quickly take forward the another thing is prosperity. We all want to be prosperous, and prosperity is not wealth. It is the feeling. If I happen to have 6 shirts and I put on one shirt a day, and on Sunday I wash all of them and then iron them, I use. If I happen to get one shirt as a gift from my daughter, one of the old shirt I give it to a needy person, maybe my sweeper or the gardener, because I have the feeling that 6 shirts are more than sufficient for me. Friends, understand one thing. When we are referring to physical facilities, all the items, the car, the house, the laptop, the table, chair, curtains, clothes, food, all these are the facilities. These are the facilities. These facilities, you ask any one of them, is it required in limited quantity or in unlimited quantity? Do you need limited number of laptops, computer, or car, or unlimited number? Do you need a limited number of house or unlimited number of houses? Do you need limited amount of food or unlimited amount of food? Do you need limited number of clothes or unlimited number of clothes? So when you have the clarity, you need every single item in limited quantity. That quantity you can identify. And if you do not identify that quantity, you keep the bottom of that bowl open, then any amount of quantity you put in, it will never get filled. That is what is the feeling. Feeling is that bottom. The feeling to decide. Education's role comes here, that how to decide what is enough for me. So that after certain stage, I feel that I have enough, I am prosperous. So that if I'm able to acquire more, I'm able to produce more, I have to earn more. How do I spend in nurturing relationship with others? That is the role of the education. So the basic human aspiration, not from today, from the cave era, from the time immemorial to the present days of science and tech, is to be in a state of continuous happiness and prosperity. And that is why our parents spent so much of money, and we spend so much of more than half of our life to be in a state of continuous happiness and prosperity. And happiness is to be a state of harmony in our thought. And then prosperity is feeling of having more than required physical facility. If the two corporate brothers are fighting in the court for 20,000 crore, having 5 lakh crores with each one of them, they're not having the feeling of having more than required. They're living in a state of deprivation, that 20,000 crore comes more, then I will feel prosperous. No, they will never feel prosperous. They may become wealthy they may become rich or richer or richest, but they will never be prosperous. Prosperous, a school teacher retired in a primary school of a village may be a prosperous person. Your peon may be a prosperous person as compared to you. And your owner of the institution may be living with a feeling of deprivation. दरिद्रता के भाव से रह रहा हो सकता है. Well, so do we want to be happy? Do we want to be prosperous? Yes, that's what we said. Then where is the effort? Is effort for continuity of happiness and prosperity or just accumulation of physical facility? That is what is to be seen. What is this accumulation of facility? Are we all the time working for it, or is there something more to it? So for him, harmony comes from here. Human being, physical facility is necessary, but relationship is also necessary. I would just like to give you, because I have little less time available at my disposal, I request you to revisit, if you have not seen, a document, a true incident about an year and a half ago had happened in Thailand. You know, this Thai cave incident in Chiang Rai province of Thailand on 23rd June 2018. This junior football team, 12 children and a coach who was just about 25 years of age. When they had played the game in the afternoon, they had some time at their disposal, so they just entered into a cave. And as they ventured more and more inside, suddenly the month of June and July happened to be the monsoon season in Thailand. Torrential rain started and the water started gushing into that cave. So what these children did and this coach, they kept going deeper and deeper, and suddenly they came across where only one child could, or one person could go through at a time, but the water was gushing in. So they went through it, and after that they got trapped. Now almost 10,000 people all across the globe, you know, they were engaged in rescuing these people. 4 days later, when they could not be traced, every single medical expert said that there is no likelihood of any child, at least any child, remaining survive. You see, the children's age was, youngest was 11 years and eldest was 16 years. The children were 11 years to 16 years. You are familiar, many of you must be having the children in this age group. That they cannot remain survived. But on 2nd July, when the two Britishers, they reached to the children, they asked one question, because as they spotted how many, and they all exclaimed happily, 13. All 13 of them survived without food almost for 10-11 days. No water, no food, no light, pitch dark inside. You see, when they were invited to UK after many months, when they all had recovered from this trauma, you just watched that interview. What questions were asked to them and how could they live? So when we say this physical facility, there was nothing there. In fact, the doctor said that if with no water, the child's kidneys will fail in 4 days, and if they consume the water of the rain, they will get infected. In any case, the survival chances are next to nil. But look, just read and see those documentaries. There are plenty of them. The instant you put the word Thai cave incident in 2018, so many URLs will open. This is what kind of relationship was maintained and kept them alive. It's a wonderful life story. And when we say this physical facility, there are endless stories. I don't have to really say. I would like you to just read and Google one Mayo Clinic research. It was done for 6 years. And this was a team of 11 doctors, 3 of them with Indian origin, Dr. Ravi Chandra Ganesh, Dr. Saswati Mahapatra and Amit Sood. These are 3 Indian doctors, not Indian doctors, American doctors with Indian origin. This is the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, US. 2012, they picked up a very large number of CEOs of leading MNCs, and they had serious problems of sleep or this high level of anxiety, extremely highly paid. But then they had serious disorder of anxiety. And what they found, it's a very interesting research over a period of 6 years, that 51.3% of them were reportedly suffering from extremely high stress, and 2/3 of the CEOs they admitted the chief reason of their stress was work related to profit to the company. Not only this, the 2/3 of them, this is interesting, they said had been due to the stress related to the relationship in the families. Total mistake. It's a very eye-opener study. But then when we say if the focus is only here, look at, we had again a year and a half ago a very famous case in India where the cafe coffee day man, this Vijay Siddhartha, he jumped into a Netravati river in Mangalore, leaving close to 1,000 crores behind. And I know one very close to our relatives, one incident took place. This man was Lucky Gupta Agrawal in Noida. This is a techie turned entrepreneur who killed himself by inhaling nitrogen. And you see, he was an IT person. He had a startup in Hyderabad. He was earning millions. In his suicide note, what he left behind for his wife, that this nitrogen cylinder, I have taken it on loan from this shop, and 5,000 rupees is kept as security. Return back and collect that money. This is what he had written in his suicide note, leaving behind millions. And what he said, I'm fed up with my life. Really is also important. So I'll just go over to the role of the education sanskar, because I'm told less time, otherwise I have taken it forward. So basically, what is the role? Right understanding in every person, the capacity to live in relationship with other human beings, and capacity to identify the need of physical facility and acquire skill and practice for sustainable production. Now, see the 3 steps, and in this entire gamut of education, where is the focus? The skill acquisition is a very small component, and this is the highest focus. Look at the colleges today in the campus placement. They say they are putting on hoardings that we have the students placed with such high salary. Because where is the gross misunderstanding? Because you earn more, you will be happier. Many of you may be earning more, but ask yourself, do you love your job when you are entering into the gate of that particular place of work, the institution or the college or the university? Do you have very positive vibrations? Euphoria that, wow, today is the work to deliver something, day to deliver something. So the skills, it will give an edge. Skill on this, skilling this is what is happening all around. So we are focused only here. But if you see, the role of the education is to develop that right understanding in every person. And what is that right understanding? That right understanding is harmony at the human being, at my level, in my family, in the society, harmony with nature and existence. Otherwise, I'll keep exploiting. Why are we having a situation that every year, 6 weeks to 8 weeks, the children and elders are told not to venture out because the air outside has become so toxic? Why are we buying the air purifiers in place of water purifier today? When I was a young child in a village and went for first time to join the job at Bangalore in 1976, I went by Kerala Karnataka Express, which took 50 hours. I don't know whether this train is anymore there existing or not, but at 15 stations I got down to drink water from the hand pumps at railway platforms. Up to 13 years of age, I drank water from a well in my village. There were no hand pumps in that time. Can I do it today? We did it, not the nature. So this air which you are inhaling in this morning, if it is withdrawn even for 5 minutes, or the oxygen component is withdrawn for 5 minutes from this, what is going to happen to any one of us? We can imagine. So which corporate house is providing this oxygen in which you are breathing in? Which company? This only the trees, the plants. That is what is the nature which is providing. And what is happening in this areas, in cities, in townships? We claim ourselves to be highly developed, the educated, and NCR is highly educated, National Capital Region. So that is why the Nauroji Nagar, we have cut 1700 trees already. They were cut before the Supreme Court intervened, where the World Trade Center is coming up in the heart of the city, which were the lungs of the city. So they thought the heart will carry on working without oxygen. That is the lack of this right understanding. So the role of the education is to have this right understanding in every person, and then capacity to live in relationship with other human beings in the family, larger group of family in the society, and then whatever skills we require, we should be able to practice it only for sustainable production, not reckless production. Otherwise, what is happening? All this pollution of water, air, depletion of the natural resources, everything is happening. Why there is so much of concern? Because we have gone wrong here. This is what is the role of the education. But where is the focus? Is skilling and acquiring physical facility. Endlessly, continuously working for it without realizing we need it only in limited quantity. Well, so with this, I would leave to the, I just wanted to just show you this before I close, that we are in harmony. If you see physical order, the soil, metal, air, earth, all this is the physical order. The another order is bio order, trees, plants, shrubs, grass, and these animals, birds. They have no issue with themselves. Perfect cyclability is there. It is only the human being which is considered to be excellence in species, which has the ability to think. There is a question mark. We are dependent on each one of them. This air is coming from physical order. Water is coming from physical order. The food is being developed through these two interactions, bio order and physical order for us. Animal order also is giving us the domestication of animals, the milk products, everything is coming from here. Look at what are we giving back to them. So there is no recyclability in case of the or reciprocation from the human order. This is what is the role of the education. So present day problems are only due to this lack of the right understanding. And this is my last slide where I say that one thing we should remember, nature has much more than the requirement of every single plant, animal, and human person. It can sustain without any problem. It has much more than enough. Preserving the plant order, preserving the animal order, preserving the human order, no issue. And at the same time, every human being has the potential in respect of caste, creed, gender to produce more than his or her own requirement. Then why there is so much of disharmony, conflict among the people? Why cannot we live in peace? I leave you with this simple question, that what you see the nations exhibiting on their national celebrations, when you just happen to see a parade on the roads in any nation, whether Russia or China or America or India or South Korea, what do you see? You see the mammoth exhibition of their most modern weaponry. This is what we exhibit, because we acquire more and more most modern weapons. For what purpose? To fight war so that we can live in peace. This is the irony. This is the education. This is being received, and this is being craved for, that we want to fight war with people to live in peace. Verify this at your own right, explore and look for answers. Where are we going? Is all this education required for what? If it cannot give me peace, it cannot give me harmony, it cannot give me happiness, it cannot give me a feeling of prosperity, then what is the role of this education? And that is why, if you really happen to see the entire focus in the new education policy, this is the first statement. Education is fundamental for achieving full human potential, developing an equitable and just society, and promoting national development. This element is very small, while the entire focus in the new education policy is here. So with these questions, I leave you behind. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Gitanjali ma'am.
Informative session, and actually it is really important to understand the life cycle of human being as we keep on studying and keep on going our increasing our knowledge, and then we don't know how to use it and apply it in different domains. So thank you so much, it was really informative, and hope we get more sessions with you in future so that we can still get connected with you. Thank you, sir. Now I will be taking the honor of introducing our next keynote speaker, Professor Vandana Arora. Professor Vandana Arora is presently working with Lloyd Group of Institutions as Group Director. She is gold medalist, postgraduate from College of Pharmacy. She leads Lloyd Group of Institutions as Group Director. Ma'am is a recipient of Lieutenant Governor's Trophy for the Best Outgoing Student, Delhi University. She has been an academic topper throughout. She has recently completed her legal studies and is also an alumnus of IIM Bangalore for management studies. After a brief stint in the pharma industry with Ranbaxy, R&D, and Smart Analyst, she took up to teaching and has been in this profession since 18 years now. She has been an author to many national and international papers, guided around 60 master students, and has presented internationally at FIPs in Melbourne and Sweden. With she finds her success through her students. I would like to welcome you, ma'am, and I'm looking forward to enter to the pool of your knowledge. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Gitanjali, ma'am. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
That's actually the mandatory question which has to be asked when presenting during a webinar. And before I start presenting my screen, I'd like to give my compliments to Dr. Gajendra Singh for bringing so much harmony in the webinar. You know, these kind of sessions are very rare when we talk about faculty development programs or when we talk about quality enhancement. We miss out on the happiness and harmony quotient. Very well presented, and maybe we can connect later for more inputs on how to bring more harmony in the institutes. Also, thanks for having me here, Dr. Hemant. He's been a connect through AICT UKERI and personally also a great friend. And Dr. Vikas for organizing this session. And thanks for having me here. It's wonderful to see, you know, so many people who've joined this national seminar of the IQAC at ABES College. And in fact, what I'm going to be talking in the next, I hope, 18 to 20 minutes is going to be very different from harmony. So we've just heard harmony, and what I'm going to take you through is disruption, you know, which is just an antonym of harmony. And as you know, we've been seeing so much, we are witnessing that disruptions always bring transformation and innovation. So disruption is not a negative word. In fact, you know, with the hour by hour changes which are happening because of the global health crisis, because of the pandemic, universities and institutes across the globe are making drastic changes. You know, sometimes, in fact, we have seen during the pandemic overnight changes also, and which is shifting the traditional face-to-face course content delivery to an online delivery. And that is what we shall be talking about. We shall be talking about the paradigm shift that we have been witnessing already, and that is actually going to potentially shape the future trajectory as well. You know, we are not going to be stuck at this point. We are going to go really high level on online education platforms. In fact, the question for higher education is at this moment, what will the universities of future look like? You know, that is what is the question which intrigues us. Will this brick and mortar, are we going to exist in these buildings, or are we going to turn completely online? So also, now that we are making short-term decisions, you know, most of you belong to great institutes, and you all know we are making short-term decisions as to, you know, doing Zoom webinars or using a Teams for lectures, because we are responding to the global pandemic. It is just a response. But now what we have to find is a long-term opportunity to reinvent the traditional university learning experience. In fact, you know, from the Vedic times, especially in India, because we never miss out an opportunity to talk about our golden history. So from those Vedic times to the present times, learning has always been taking place in a single mode with physical proximity of the teacher and the student. And a change of this ecosystem had to happen, you know, it had to happen after so many millennia. You know, this mode of dissemination of knowledge had to go through an innovation. And that has certainly happened now with COVID. We have really gone online, and this has been an year of phenomenal transformation. In fact, looking at the, you know, the pandemic effect on the institutions of higher learning, those that adapted swiftly were able to move very seamlessly into the online mode of knowledge dissemination. Like I was telling Dr. Hemant in the morning, I was asking for sharing the content rights. He said, we'll do it. So I said, yeah, you know it already. You're an acclaimed college. You're all IT professionals, so you know it. So those are the kind of institutes who have adapted really swiftly. And there have been ones who have not been prepared. You know, those are suspended in mid-space even now. Now, what is amazing in this time is a number of reputed universities, you know, which sprouted like mushrooms earlier, are now offering free online courses in every field of students and webinars, training faculty, you know, to fill the empty spaces, in fact, which has been created by the lack of physical teaching engagements. So it is like we have been, you know, accelerated. We have been trajected into 2025. You know, the entire world has gone in acceleration. So these days, everybody out of these faculty hear of simulations. We hear of flipped classrooms, some words which we had never heard, you know, and multimedia learning. So we have moved to a teaching space which requires the ability to capture the student's attention, which we don't have to miss out. And how a teacher assesses whether the student has assimilated what he has been taught. So it has to be very carefully drafted, and online learning environment definitely is highly effective. I certainly advocate that, and it facilitates, you know, assimilation of concepts. And just that the institutes have to, you know, get quickly adapt with that, and the policy makers also, who are, you know, scrambling at some places to accommodate, you know, so they have to they have to face their unique struggles and quickly adapt. So let's quickly brush through the presentation that I have. Just allow me a moment. Yeah. So I hope the presentation is visible. If Gitanjali ma'am could confirm.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's
Thank you
visual.
very much. So this we've already spoken about, but it was a good picture of empty chairs. So you can have a look at that again. And also I'd like to reinforce that, now we are all intelligent, very intelligent group of people who are sitting here. So I would like to reinforce that intelligence is no longer about remembering things. It is no longer about the memory tests. In fact, intelligence these days is synonym to wisdom. Wisdom means to differentiate between right and wrong. So we all have to act intelligent as senior leaders of institutes. We have to have the ability to learn from our past experiences and use that knowledge of that experience to adapt quickly to make future decisions. And I stress on the fact quickly. So we can't really delay these kind of judgments and these kind of decisions, because the world is changing really fast, as you can see in the picture as well. Also, since we're going to be talking about paradigm. So what is a paradigm change? A paradigm is actually a worldview. It is not local. It's a worldview which guides the thinking and practice of individual and groups. So as we can say, the education's paradigm is changing from teaching focus to competency focus, and that is what we need to be prepared for. Students' expectations have changed, and that's why we need this paradigm shift. Students in 1970s, when there was in-person and paper-based interactions, to when students rose in non-traditional, roles and non-traditional methods of teaching, and the internet to the year 2000s. And obviously now, when the students are expecting a return on investment and not only a degree. And in fact, there is an interesting conversation about return on investment, to which will come a little while later. So, like I said, we have to change fast, because the world, the technology is changing really, really fast. But are we changing fast enough? So as we can see in this, very interesting slide, the pace of change and the ability to respond, there is a mismatch. The pace of change is regulations increasing, and sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. Are you changing slides?
Yeah, I am.
Ma'am, then please share your complete screen, because your complete screen is not shared. So the only first slide is visible.
Oh, I changed a couple of times, in fact. Okay. Now, are we able to?
If you will share your complete screen, I think you might have shared only single window of that PPT.
Okay, let me go to that.
So you just please reshare first.
Okay, let me just go back to that. Yeah, so we're on slide 1 now. Visible, Dr. Vikas?
Yes, it's visible.
Now changing, right? You're able to see this?
No, you change it?
Yeah, I did, yeah. How come this is happening? I selected all the slides like we do all the time. Okay.
Now it's changing. Now this is slide number 2.
Yeah, but then it should change automatically.
You change it. You change it. 3.
Yeah. Okay.
For checking purpose, you just do one thing. Whenever you are changing slide, for few slides or 2 or 3 slides, you just say that now moving ahead to the next slide. So we will confirm that that
Right,
slide
right.
is changing.
So are you on slide number 4 now?
3.
Or 5?
3.
Still 3. Okay. So I'm actually sharing an application window. That's
why I'm saying you are sharing application window, and once you are in the full screen mode, in that case, that slide will not change. You just share your complete desktop.
Yeah, that's what I did. Okay. Sorry for this mess. I'll just go again there.
No, mate, these are the technical issues, and we need to adapt. That's why
I
you
know,
have
that's why
mentioned.
we've been doing this.
You mentioned that the how quickly we can adapt.
How quickly we can adapt. I know. Absolutely right.
Yes, now I think you have shared the complete screen.
Yeah. Are you there?
Yes. You just.
Let me know, Vikas, in case you're able.
Yes, ma'am. Now it's visible. This is the first slide, and then slides are changing.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for this.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So yeah, we're on slide number 5 now.
Now slide number is not visible.
Fine, but you can see this. Are you changing?
Yes. We are on slide number 5. Yes. It's
Great.
Okay.
So we had a quick disharmony in between the slides and what we've been talking about. So let's get back to harmony, and let's change fast enough the slides as well as our online teaching methodology. Now, so what I was talking about, there is a disconnect between the pace of change and the ability to respond. And that is what has to match. The ability to respond is actually at a lower level in the graph, whereas the pace of change, which is needed because of the innovation, because of competition, and because of student expectation, there is a mismatch, and we need to respond quickly to the pace of change which is required. So moving on to the next slide. What is a paradigm shift, and why do we need it? Why higher education has to be reconceptualized? So either there is a revolutionary way of doing it, like very quickly something happens, or an evolutionary way which happens over time, the way we've been doing in the last century, or it could be both revolutionary as well as evolutionary. And how it happens, so there are various reasons by which the paradigm shift could be needed, which could be the globalization need, or which is called internationalization, or a political legal reforms which come over, or socio-economic technological innovations, and most importantly what we're talking about, the corona pandemic. Obviously with the need comes inhibitors, so there are obstacles everywhere. And what are the obstacles? The most important obstacle is the fixed mindset. So we've got some very senior people in the organizations or in the regulatory or in the government, and that is what causes the opposition to all the change anywhere, and that is what we have to fight out. Obviously there are other reasons like the institutional inertia. Sometimes there are some people who resist change, and there are social, economic, structural barriers. We come to this slide of reinventing the traditional way and reinventing the teaching learning. So this very interesting analogy between grocery shopping and doing an online education. People, now tell that we are buying grocery online and we are doing a course online. So what is the difference between the two, and why this need comes? Because grocery shopping doesn't come with an expected objective or an outcome, which is basically the function of IQAC that you also function on. And in fact, the reason why education is happening, it has to come with a definite outcome. In fact, every lecture we teach, each question of a question paper has to come with an outcome. So similarly, the online education too has to result in the required outcome, which is the difference. And hence we cannot take online education in a very, very simple way. But still, very interesting, students are still treated or sometimes envisioned by certain organizations, by certain teachers, by certain providers of online education as customers, which is an entirely new paradigm. In fact, this is interesting. In fact, this is the most intriguing part of my presentation, which you may ponder later as well. Higher education students are being considered as clients. In fact, the idea of student customers goes beyond the demand for proper attention to the students. It is an entirely new paradigm, in higher education, which also includes other factors, like which are written on this page as well, about the idea of higher education as an institution associated with a greater capacity for attracting students and satisfying students. There are some study programs which are conceived by the students, obviously because as important for their personal and economic investment. In fact, the quality systems are also centered on the value of customer satisfaction. And the students also these days have started correlating it with the ROI, which is a new idea which we had never heard about. And there are high tuition rates, and therefore the students have this attitude of demanding value for money and thinking more like a customer than as members of the university community. So they demand, and therefore the university acts as a provider. So the university also, though in a concrete and specific way, provides something like a return for the investment that the student has made. But as we might have anticipated, this is not the case. The student is not a customer, to which we will come. But the version online which came before was not very good, and we all saw that. To think of student as a customer, is not a participative process. Education is a participatory process. Students are not products, consumers, or they are not users of a service. They are participants. Education is not a service provided for a customer, and this is for many institutes to understand. For the senior leaders of the universities and the institutes and the providers of online certifications around the world have to understand. So the question is how to maintain how to maintain and strengthen the value of universities. And the only way to do so now is online learning. So the first version, as we might have anticipated, the first iteration of online only education was not very good. And now has come Learning Reimagined, which is a new era of virtual education, because this medium allows room for students to shape their own adventure. This comes with persistent problems, and we are all facing it as teachers. We just faced one, so there has been low completion rates. Also, students enroll in courses and don't complete it because of lack of that physical push. And in fact, there was a report by Bloomberg Business Week which said 70% of America's 1.5 million faculty members have never taught a virtual course. And also that 15% of undergrads did their coursework totally online in September 2019, only 15% students. So there could be unconnected students, there could be poorly prepared instructors. So a lot of persistent problems on which we have to work on. So to overcome these obstacles, we again as leaders have to understand to build the virtual learning environment at our workplaces. If an organization hasn't transitioned to the cloud yet, there are a few things to consider. Whether you favor an on-premise or an off-premise or a hybrid cloud approach. Also, you need to, understand the organizational's appetite for CAPEX versus your OPEX, that is the capital expenditure versus your operational expenditure, because each organization is different. Also, you need to understand as a provider of education, as a senior leader, as in what model works best for your organization's culture. So people like me or like others might give a lot of gyan on what ideally should happen in a virtual learning environment. But since each organization is different, you might need to consider which model works for you. You have to develop a view of how many users will be on the system, how many students, faculty, staff, administrators, how many of them need access, what are the needs, what are the peak times of use, and we have to look at the historical network traffic to make this educated guess. So we have to listen to all this gyan, but not really follow everything we hear. And there are short-term implications to this, that we've already discussed, so I'll surf through this. But there is a use of technology that, we've all been using for virtual classrooms. You've all been using already. And there is, we've been using lecture captures, which is very interesting. We've been using these webinars, conferencing. But at the same time, we have to consider the security considerations, to consider the infrastructure upgrade, the course development. So we have to find a blend. And to build the virtual environment, we have to consider some very key issues like integration of, integration with other technologies. We have to consider versatility, as in how this technology is going to help in a lot of courses, in a lot of way in the organization. When a management is spending money on developing some technology in the institute, you cannot restrict it to one particular thing in the institute, which is not only an online course provider, maybe it can be used in n number of things. Definitely the technology has to be scalable, because probably today you have 50 students or 100 students or maybe 100 users, but it has to be scalable to probably 1,000 or 10,000 students. So whatever technology you get to integrate has to be scalable. There has to be instructor support and training at all levels. At all levels, the instructor will need an IT support. Definitely, we have to find the right blend. So this blend, this in fact is a very important thing that I keep telling my faculty, my people as well. So a blended course could be anything from a traditional lecture class in which the instructor shares probably a file of background notes over the internet, to a course in which most of the content is delivered, delivered online with a few face-to-face discussions with the instructor. So there is a blend, face-to-face instruction as well as an online thing. But these, obviously, how to find the right blend depends on answering a few questions like what are the learning objectives of the course. So there could be a graduation course, there could be a post-grad course, there could be an online certification. So the objective of each is different. And to meet those objectives, what would be the right way to deliver that content? Today we are talking on MS Teams, probably for a very casual meeting, maybe with a vendor, or for executing a new course, probably through Microsoft or Oracle or any other vendor who's selling a course. Maybe we could do a quick Zoom meeting. So what kind of technology is needed? What is the learning objective? What technology is available? What skills are available? So technology which is available, skills which are available to the instructor, and what is the learning objective? We can do a change and find the right blend for ourselves. And we cannot absolutely fix it. We just have to remember that a clear course structure and an integration between virtual and face-to-face elements are essential to an effective learning process. And I stress on this that we have to think global, but we have to act local. We cannot totally simulate what America is doing, what Europe is doing, because our needs are different. Our availability of IT support is different. Our people who need this are different. Their infrastructure is different. Hence, we need to act local and see where we can fit in. The future of education is essentially, as per the quote that I found somewhere, is very beautiful, and we put it on the walls here. The future of education says it will be essential to pay attention to human connection in virtual teamwork and find ways to ensure that human support is continued. So we are no longer going to be robots, and probably shuck away all the other, physical connect with the students. We still will exist. We just have to find the right blend between virtual, face-to-face connect. The love and the affection between the teacher and the student will definitely still stay. And because we're talking of future, so the expected market characteristics in future, this is a KPMG data which said that the expected market characteristic in future education will have enhanced student support that will be needed. Any institute which offers value-added services like career counseling, like industry interaction, so that will be a key retention factor for students. There will be blended education. So there will be online players, and also we will have offline touch points. Also, KPMG data says that who is going to thrive is which takes support of the government initiatives for infra support, especially in rural and suburban areas. And most importantly, you can see it at the last, is the freemium model. So we have to provide students free access to course content to make wise buying decisions. Not all courses which we sell online are going to be sellable unless we provide them first free access to the course content so they make a decision. The new paradigm in a nutshell, what we've been talking about, which is your takeaway from this session, there is going to be reimagination of partnerships with international universities, not in the usual way we collaborate with universities today. There is going to be an emergence of private and government-backed ranking frameworks, which is no longer going to be the rudimentary way of the framework guidelines that exist today. It's going to evolve with time. There is going to be a shift in focus of curriculum. There will be revised outcomes. Also, there is a need for diversification in course curriculum, and the world is going to be led by augmented reality. So there is hope after COVID, and that is what I've been talking about. Disruption is not negative. Disruption disruption brings with itself innovation, technological innovation. And there is a lot of hope after the COVID. We are going to be hugging our people again. There's going to be rising economy, and there's going to be joy in online sessions also. Online is not just sitting at the computer, just that we need preparedness for that. And the last thought, if you wish to fly, you have to give up the things that weigh you down. And that is a mantra for all the institutes, for all the senior faculty, for all the young faculty. Let's not be weighed down by things we don't know. I don't know how to use this. I'm not a technology person. Let's not weigh down because we wish to fly. And where we wish to fly, nothing can, weigh us down because that wish is there. But only wishing doesn't help. What helps is the ability to fly as well. And we have to bring out that ability from ourselves. So I would just conclude by saying that I think, with digitization and with online courses, an entire floodgate of opportunities has opened for the Indian higher education sector. Let's get the maximum maximum benefit out of it, and let nothing weigh us down. So over to you, Gitanjali. If there's anything anybody wants to discuss, we can do it now or probably later.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was really very enthusiastic to listen to you, actually. It really felt very nice. And I hope we all, get understood what things you told us and should follow the path that you people have followed and showed us. Thank you. And now I would be informing you people that there were one more keynote speaker who wanted to present to us here, Professor Dr. Ashish Malik. And because of some emergency, he is unable to visit us today virtually. So we will be finding him some other day so that we can have a talk with him. And now the next session will be followed by the valedictory session after the lunch, which will start at 1:30. Vikas sir, are you saying something?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Vandana, ma'am, for joining the session. And it was wonderful to hear you. And the few key points which I have noted from your talk, I think if please correct me if I am wrong, that you mentioned that students are not the products, they are the participants.
That's right, sir. That's right.
So this is the wonderful thought which you have shared with us. And then the outcome, or we can say that the conclusion, you mentioned that only online education is not good. We need to understand this, and we need to explain this to our students also, because they are enjoying nowadays online education because of understood reasons.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. In fact, it has to be very customized. Like I said, we cannot follow all the gyan which is given at various, by various people. We have to see what suits us the best. I think that's how it is. To each one their own. But just that what we feel is that there has to be a blend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sparing your valuable time and accepting our invitation.
Thanks for having me, sir.
And to all the participants, as Gitanjali ma'am has already informed, that the another keynote speaker, actually he is having some urgent work, so he will not be with us. So we are coming to an end of this keynote session. And after the break, we will resume, or we will meet in the valedictory session at 1:30 p.m. Thank you. We will meet at 1:30.
So, yeah, everyone.